Professor Kancha Ilaiah, Professor G.N.Devy, Professor Apoorvanand, and all the guests who have joined this meeting. I welcome all to this meeting in memory of K.P.Sasi. It's on a hot topic, the politics of language. Yesterday, we had a sad loss. Anil Chaudhary, one of the pillars of social movements in India, passed away sadly yesterday. He was a great interconnector of movements, social movements in India, and also campaign in all life against anti-nuclear movement, and also for India-Pakistan peace and peace in general. He was a great, and he was also a great admirer and a supporter of K.P.Sasi. So we are paying our respect and condolences to Anil Chaudhary. K.P.Sasi passed away on December 25, 2022. He would have been 67 by now. If we were alive, he would have been 67. We all miss him every day. I can say that personally, there's not a single day I haven't missed Shashi. Every issue comes up, we would think about what Shashi would have thought, what Shashi would have done, what Shashi would have, what solution would Shashi would have found. So it was this, we all miss the loss of Shashi created a great void amongst us. So this series, we thought we create a series of talks, seminars, and other activities to remember and carry on his legacy, so that the void created by Shashi can be filled in a little way, in a small way that we can do. So in this language issue came up, we thought, what would have Shashi thought? What would have Shashi done? What Shashi would have written? What cartoon Shashi would have drawn? I know everybody would know about K.P.Sasi, but I will give you a brief introduction who Shashi was. Shashi was a cartoonist. He started off his activist career as a cartoonist. Then he moved on to filmmaking, both documentary and feature film. He was a writer. He was a great communicator. He was a great activist. Most of all, he was a great friend who connected activists, friends across India and across the globe. So when we lost Shashi, we lost that link. That connection has been lost. Through this seminar, through these webinars, we will try to we all try to stay together as Shashi's friends and to fill that vacuum that left by Shashi. As for Shashi, he was not a he was a cartoonist, filmmaker, writer. Actually, he excelled in everything. Everybody knows that Shashi was the son of the founder of Communist Party in Kerala, K.P.Sasi. If he pursued a political career, as most people do in these days, he would have been an MLA, MP, or a minister, even a minister. If he pursued a cartoonist, his cartooning career would have been one of the celebrated cartoonists in India or across the world. If he pursued his filmmaker career, he would have been a great filmmaker, and he would have been anything. You know, Shashi, I know Shashi as a person who always traveled, walked, came into our homes with an empty pocket. He never had a bank balance. His pocket was always empty. You know, this, this state of total, uh, total confusion about what will he do, what will we do with for the necessity of money for the next day, what will he do, the next food. So he was worried about all these things every day. But still, he pursued his career, he pursued his activism with great vigor, and uh, and as a stood as a champion of minorities and the marginalized people of India. So he would have said, would say, well, we are the majority, we minorities, women, Dalits, Muslims, Adivasis, we are the majority. We all should come together. If we all came together, we can easily be the majority. So I would like to thank you all who have come to join this webinar. And also I would like to say that this will not be the last of this series to remember Shashi. We will continue these kinds of serious discussion, talk, seminars, if not physical, but online. Well, once again, I welcome you all to the program, and I invite Satyasagar to moderate the program.
Thank you, Binu. Once again, on my behalf, also welcome to everyone who's joined, and there are more probably wanting to join. We'll start the session anyway over time. The theme of this webinar was chosen obviously because of the fact that it has been sort of hot topic or a controversial topic in the last month or so, particularly in the context of the new education policy of the government of India, the union government, not the central government, the union government trying to push the three-language formula through the new education policy, and the objections raised by the Tamil Nadu government, which were to be expected given the history of very long struggle against the imposition of Hindi in Tamil Nadu. But the idea of this webinar was not to confine ourselves to that particular controversy, because that has been well discussed and debated, and people have different views on the subject. The key theme that we are looking at here is, as the title says, the politics of language and the language of politics. So we have two different ways of looking at language. One is the politics of language policies that are there in India since independence, or even historically, which language is promoted over the other languages. There's a long history in India of certain languages being promoted as being superior to others. And here the question of diversity of India, which one of our speakers, Professor Devi, would be the best person to speak on that. The phenomenal diversity of languages in India. So who can really say that which language is superior to the other? And language at a very, very primary level is a matter of identity. That's why we call it the mother tongue. A mother is very, very personal. So there needs to be no great rationale for loving one's mother and loving one's mother tongue. And it's a matter of your cultural identity, and the preservation of that identity and the promotion of that identity is a very fundamental desire and the right of all citizens of India. So this is one part of the theme. The other part of the theme is that the language of politics, which is an area that we need to discuss, because irrespective of which language you're speaking, what we find is that in each language today, meanings are being distorted. uh, words are being twisted. You have the misuse of language. So by the politicians also, but commentators, everybody is playing with the language in a way that the old meanings are disappearing. So democracy is not what it used to be anymore. So it doesn't matter how many languages you speak, how you use the language is also very important. I'll stop here and invite Professor G.N.Devy to be the first speaker of the session. We all know him as a great chronicler and a documenter of the diversity of Indian languages and his efforts to preserve the cultural and intellectual wealth embedded in marginalized and tribal languages is a very special achievement on his part. And we're all thankful to him for having brought to us all this knowledge that he has collected. And beyond that, he's also a very, very astute political commentator, cultural commentator, social analyst, because he brings an angle to social and political and even economic issues or material issues to deal with our material lives. A very special angle because of his depth of understanding of the culture and history of this country. I hand it over to you, Professor Devy. I would request you to keep your presentation to around 15 minutes.
Thank you.
Just a word on the format. We'll have 3 speakers, one after the other, and we'll have, after that, time for questions and discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Satya Shivaraman, and my eminent co-panelists, Professor Kancha Ilaiah and Professor Apoorvanand ji, and all those who are present for this online remembering of a great mind who's kept inspiring us, K.P.Sasi. So paying my homage, my tributes to him, let me say the following. I shall not repeat the known facts about this 3-language formula or the debate that has heated up between Tamil Nadu and the federal government. I shall turn to the meaning of all those things, beginning with something that happened long time back, and that is roughly 1400 years before Christ. The isolated groups of people from Central Asia arrive in India, bringing with them the Sanskrit language. Also in the process, given their nomadic pastoral environment and sociology, able to remember a lot and develop literature based on memory, which became the first Veda, the Rig Veda. That's about 1300 years before Christ. There is a great commentator who was steeped in the Vedic literature, and that is Sri Aurobindo. He says in a book called The Secret of the Veda, I am quoting Aurobindo because he was competent to understand Rig Veda. He says that almost for 700 years, the Vedic ritas were recited orally. And after first time after 700 years had passed, an attempt was made to put together all those in a text. And the gap between what was being said in oral tradition and what was written was so large that people from the times of Upanishad, Brihadaranyaka Upanishad was 7th century before Christ, all people subsequently kept feeling that the Vedas had practically everything in them. And though the number of speakers of that language was very small at that time, in later centuries, subsequently, and till today, the Sanskrit was spoken by an extremely small number of people, which is a fact of history. and not an opinion that I'm presenting, but a fact of history, a well-researched fact of history, extremely small number. And yet the status of the language went very high because 700 years after Rig Veda was composed, nobody was able to fully understand what it was. They felt every knowledge, every bit of knowledge is there in the Veda. Now, this high status of Sanskrit allowed Sanskrit to become a language of language hegemony in this country. That is, it actually touched, transformed in many ways, rather sadly, the way people lived their life and the structure of the society. And the most sad thing was that it brought in the Varna. The caste is a different thing, and I'll not even get into that discussion just now. But this higher and lower, that we who speak this language are higher type and all others are next to us. Some are closer to us, therefore they become Kshatriya. There's some still slightly distant become Vaishya. Those who are living in forests and the Adivasis and the nomads, and the laborers, they become and Shudras. This idea of hierarchy in the society, driven by acquisition of language or lack of it, has been an element deeply rooted in Indian society for the last 2800 years. That, I mean, more than 2000 years, the hierarchy-based Indian society has drawn sanction for the hierarchy purely from language acquisition. And if the Vedas have given the consent, then everything is all right. That's what all these darshanas, the various schools, beginning with Nyaya, you don't have to look at the logical consistency of a premise. If the Vedas endorse that premise, then it becomes true. Whatever is Vedokta is true automatically. Now, that is the kind of society which got built. The Varna causing absolutely despicable social condition for millions for a couple of 1,000 years is a heinous crime against humanity. I mean, we talk of war crimes, but there was no language war in India. We don't think of any instance when people went out with swords to kill speakers of other languages. There is also no language empire, as it happened later in Europe, in the case of Germany and Italy, particularly monolingual nation. That did not happen in India. People remained multilingual all through because they had been multilingual even before Sanskrit arrived here. They remained multilingual. After Sanskrit came, Sanskrit spread, but the language hegemony as an idea got planted here, and it spread like wild cactus, like poison trees, and poisoned the minds of people forever. All of us, I'm saying, without any exception. Now, one corrective to that came during the second millennium, the Bhakti period, which some say began in Tamil Nadu, Tamil language, some say in Central India, some say it came with Sufis, so yet others say that it actually came from early Assamese or Bangla. I will not get into that debate, where is the origin of Bhakti movement, but Bhakti tried to torpedo the language hegemony quite effectively. In fact, the Marathi poet Eknath said, if Sanskrit was created by gods, Deva Bhasha, was Marathi made by thieves? And the Bhakti poets started writing in the regional languages, what we call regional languages, new languages, other languages. Now, The second, more capable attempt took place in the Constituent Assembly debates. Particularly, that particular debate in September, on 13th, 14th, 15th September of 1949. The debates, there was a demand that Sanskrit be, after English. I mean, the Constituent Assembly was discussing what should we do after English. English was to be accepted as the language of business of the government for the first 15 years or 10 years. But the Constituent Assembly was looking forward to replacement of English. And so one suggestion came was Sanskrit should replace English. The other suggestion was Hindi should replace English. The first suggestion was rejected out of hands.
Peter, ich habe Fehler gemacht. Ich bin halbe Stunde spät. Just put off the camera, please.
Should I switch off my camera?
No, sir. Continue.
Should I continue? Okay.
Yes, yes.
So Sanskrit, the suggestion came from a follower of Shama Prasad Mukherjee, man from Bengal who was representing Bengal in Constituent Assembly. His suggestion that Sanskrit be the language to replace English after 15 years, that was rejected out of hands. But Sanskrit was given space in the list of the languages included in the 8th schedule. But the Constituent Assembly took a very wise decision of making no single language national language. There was language for official work. It was for Rajya Bhasha, not Rashtra Bhasha. Hindi was chosen, and that was a good decision. Choosing Hindi at that time was a good decision. Hindi was a relatively new language built on the earlier Hindi, Audi, Braj, and all that. I'll not get into that history. I actually admire the Hindi language quite a lot because it has potentials of growing as a language globally. And I love a lot of literature and songs and stories and speech of ordinary people in Hindi quite a lot, just as much as I love other languages like Kannada. I don't know Tamil, but Marathi, Gujarati, and so on. The Constituent Assembly took a conscious decision not to make any single language national language, and the Constituent Assembly also defined India as a union of states. All through the 1950s, India, that is Bharat, is a union of states. That is what makes Bharat. It makes the states, when they become union, make Bharat or India. India is a union of states. That's the official definition of this country, the republic that we are, the federation that we are. Now, though we are not 100% a federation, having gone through that process because of the nature of our history and the princely states and unification of all those states, that was a different process than what there was in the United States of America. But let's leave that aside. The point I want to make is, in the 1950s, states were created specifically as linguistic states. A linguistic state reorganization commission was created, and all through the 50s up to 1965, when Punjab was created, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Maharashtra, Orissa, Bengal, Punjab, Assam, they got created. Of course, where there were other issues, those issues were sorted out subsequently, carving out smaller states out of Assam, for instance, out of what was earlier the Punjab state, out of Telangana and Andhra Pradesh getting separated. All that happened, we know. But primarily, the Indian states are linguistic states, and the Constitution has told us that if India has to be India, it has to be a union of states. That means it has to be a union of linguistic states that we are. In this situation, the three-language formula was proposed initially with excellent intentions. And I am one for learning, for children learning as many languages as possible. It's extremely civilized to know more than one language, to know, as many languages as one can. Somebody mentioned Narasimha Rao, but there are others knowing 8, 10, 12 languages, so many writers, so many individuals, so many workers, so many unlettered people know so many languages as a matter of everyday fact in our country. So knowing language is not the issue. Learning 2 languages, 3 languages, 4 languages, 5 languages, a dozen languages is, in my opinion, not an issue. That helps the cognitive processes develop better. The issue is elsewhere. And that is, can there be a matter which is left entirely to the state be taken over by the union government? And that's a very serious question. We all know that the working of India was possible because we divided certain responsibilities and obligations by creating a central list, a state list, and a joint list, a common list. Education was with the state. The center had no say in it. Yet the center is entering that terrain. I will speed up a little bit to save time. The other thing is to have equality all through the nation, all through the country is a good idea. But it is often said by wise people, equality is a good idea. And I'm quoting Dr. Ambedkar from his thesis, The Question of Indian Rupee, where Ambedkar quotes an American president, former American president, and he says, equality is a good idea, but to impose equality on unequals is not a good idea. It creates injustice. That is, given that our languages are distributed in several families, like Dravidian family, like Tibeto-Burman family, like Austroasiatic family, and Indo-Aryan family, if the 3-language formula is not good for Austroasiatic people or Tibeto-Burman people, how can we ask them to study 3 languages? How can we ask, let's say, an Indo-Aryan language family speaker study a Dravidic language? Or how can we ask Dravidic speakers to necessarily pick up Hindi? There, this large question appears. And that question is Hindi of today, is Hindi of the BJP-ruled India trying to visualize itself as a replacement for Sanskrit, as a language of hegemony, and to probably, if one is guessing correctly, that appears to be the intention, not of the Hindi speakers. Many Hindi speakers feel pained that their language is being used for getting imposed on other states. But it is the politicians, particularly the Bharatiya Janasangh in the past and the BJP, the BJP, RSS, Hindutva ideology in the present, trying to create Hindutva, Hindustan, Hindi, Hindustan, is a language of hegemony. And that goes straight against the spirit of the Indian Constitution, Indian democracy, and all the struggle that people wage through the Bhakti movement, through the freedom movement, through the post-independence movements for equality, rights, and so on and so forth. Finally, I conclude by saying the following. The 2011 census tells us that Hindi is reported by 52 crores for the base of 121 crores that were counted in 2011, 52 crores. But if you look at the sub list of the languages given under the caption of Hindi, there are about 55 or 56 others, which total about 14 crores. That is 38 crores speak Hindi. 14 crore others are quite against their expressed desire, pushed into the basket of Hindi, the bucket of Hindi, showing the increase of Hindi language as against 2001, much higher increase of language speakers from 2001 to 2011, increase for Hindi much higher than the increase for Bangla, Telugu, Tamil, Kannada, Marathi, Oriya, and all other scheduled languages. And believe me, Telugu, which used to be third language, has gone to the fourth position. It used to be Hindi, Bangla, Telugu. Now it is Hindi, Bangla, Marathi, and Telugu. Telugu is going down. It's the same with Kannada, Tamil, and Marathi. Their percentage growth percentage for the decadal, the space is far lower than the growth of Hindi language. If we are languages in the 8th schedule with equal rights on this nation, if we are states which are linguistic states making India what it is, this kind of attitude, encouragement, projection, and very many times false projection hits at the very spirit of democracy, federalism, but more than that, it hits at the spirit of our desire to modernize ourselves and to come out of the language hegemony that from which this civilization suffered for 2000 years. 2000 years. Hindi is a great language, but politics around that at the moment appears to be aggressive politics, deliberately trying to minimize, marginalize other languages. And if that tendency increases and continues, it would be exactly part 2 of the arrival of Varna system in the past. That's what logically it is showing, and that's worrisome. Language was never meant for quarrels, conflicts, and wars. Language is always meant for communication and for sharing and creating bonds, friendly bonds. But if politics gets down to this kind of level, it is time for all of us to say unitedly that we want India to remain what it was visualized in the Constitution. Besides, we want India to remain as a modern state which will not tolerate the Varna and the hierarchy and the discrimination and hegemony and all those things brought to Dalits, to women, to people who were poor, people who are not in the cities. I think the politics of language today has to be seen outside just 2025, outside just denotification and parliament power game. Power arrangement. Language politics today has to be seen in the larger perspective of history of Indian civilization, precisely to understand that we should not allow anyone to drag this country and civilization back again into the same mistakes from which our people have suffered for the last 2000 years. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Professor Devi, for explaining in such a gentle and very scholarly way the history of language hegemony in India and how it continues to resurface again and again, despite all the changing terrain of India over the centuries and all the struggles. But one of the questions that comes up again and again is on the issue of English. While English is not a language that was born in India. It is not entirely a foreign language also. Of course, the government of India's main language in many ways to communicate with the rest of India is English, and English is spoken very widely. India is probably more English-speaking people than many other countries in the world, including the so-called native English countries. So the question of English has always been one that attracts hostility in some quarters, hypocrisy in others, and enthusiastic support in others. So on this topic and perhaps other angles to the issue of the politics of language, I would invite Professor Kancha Ilaiah to speak to us and give us his insights. Professor Ilaiah is a very well-known critic of the Hindu caste system. He's a very trenchant kind of analyst of social conditions in India. In particular, he stood up for the rights of some of the most marginalized people in India in very vocal and very articulate ways. I would invite him to share his insights with us.
Well, thank you, Satya, for inviting me to participate in this very useful discourse. At the outset, I also pay tribute to K.P.Sasi, though I did not know him, nor I met him. But what Binu has been saying about him as a remarkable man passed away quite early. Now, when it comes to the topic, politics of language and language of politics, I have a major problem with the idea of mother tongue itself. You know, when I came into the primary school from a totally illiterate family, all along, there was no family in between literate or anything like that. We don't know, my family could have had its roots in Harappan civilization. So around my village, there were more Lambada families whose family language, household language was Gorboli. But the schools were teaching only Telugu. And the Lambada children had huge problem with Telugu language, and they were majority in that village. That was the first single teacher school in 1960. Even my own family was speaking a different caste language. So the idea of mother tongue now for entire Telugu regions is being defined as Telugu. No, it is not. The mother tongue of Lambada still so-called, the family language of mother speaking tongue is Lambada, Koya, Gond, tribals and so on. And juxtaposed to that, if you see, you are a world traveler, if you see in Indian airports, at least 70 to 80% mothers speak only English to their children, even in the airports. And that is their home language as well. So this whole question of defining mother tongue using that very concept is absolutely absurd, which RSS also has been trying to use in the recent definition that they gave from Bangalore session. Now, the three-language formula was being imposed ever since 1947. Even the Nehru government attempted that. And then the biggest attempt was that of Lal Bahadur Shastri, not just the present government. And luckily, the entire South Indian states were saved by the Periyar movement, which has defined the Tamil region's languages only as two. The historically evolved Tamil language, which amalgamated perhaps many other languages within the Tamil linguistic domain, English. And that really saved that region. Somehow United Andhra Pradesh accepted three languages. Kannada has been protesting. Kerala seems to have been silent about it. Now, the fundamental problem I faced in my school, I learned Telugu 56 letters with all the strain that it required. Then one single teacher taught me English 26 letters before I learned Hindi. And I thought English 26 letters were much easier to learn than Telugu 56. Then in class 6, I was forced to learn Hindi. Then the Telugu letter structure, which came perhaps from Pali or the Harappan languages, we don't know. Telugu, Tamil, Malayalam, Kannada letter formation is entirely different from Hindi letter formation, which has its roots in Sanskrit, as Professor Devi was talking about. But then I studied Hindi with a great problem with limited, they also imposed only 25 marks for passing in Hindi. For the rest of the subjects, it was 35 English, including English. And all the children today in both the Telugu states, what I know, really want to avoid Hindi, even to get that 25 marks. Because in my own life, that language has not become any useful tool to anywhere except the Telugu that I really use here and the English I use all over the world and in the state. Now the question is, while Nehru strategizing three-language formula, Nehru period, in spite of the Constituent Assembly debate, Ambedkar indirectly suggested why not we continue English. But then the major detrimental policy that they evolved was English was allowed to survive and grow in the private school teaching, which was meant for the richest of the rich then to now. And it was not allowed as a medium of instruction in any government school, even if some government wanted. All kinds of restrictions were put in. Now, for the first time, Jagan Reddy government overcame that by fighting massive court battles by using the Supreme Court judgment based on the judgment of Karnataka, which wanted to close English medium schools and then impose Kannada medium when BJP was in power for the first time. And then the Supreme Court said, no, the parents and the child is 3-year-old, 4-year-old, 5-year-old, child cannot decide. The parents' decision to put their children in the language that they want is important. So if the parents want, you should allow. So that's how that judgment defined parental choice. And Jagan Reddy mobilized 98% of government schools, Dalits, Adivasi, OBC, labor, middle classes, peasants, all their opinion to say that no, we need English medium in our government schools. And the court had no option but allowed it. Now Telangana, Andhra Pradesh has English. Now what I don't understand is Apoorvanand is here, is the English professor in Delhi University. Were the Hindi regions teaching 3 languages to their children as we were forced to have Hindi here as a 3rd language except in Tamil Nadu? When the Hindi regions were teaching only 2 languages, why were we forced to learn 3 languages, which a language which was no use for us in any other form? Now the BJP comes up with a policy after Tamil Nadu battle, and then in other states there were questions. Then Haryana recently said our children will learn. I don't know whether it is the first Hindu region state or some other states were there. Our children will learn Hindi, English, and Punjabi, that regional language. And what other Hindu, Uttar Pradesh and Bihar and other Madhya Pradesh Hindi regions teach their children 3rd language right from early school days, 6th, 7th, 5th class days onwards. Therefore, my straight fight against this whole battle is, okay, if BJP is saying one language, one nation, when the entire rich that the BJP is getting funded by all the industrialists, whose children do not even learn any other Indian language except English, why not English should be the single national language, one nation English? Because our children, the 1st generation children, have no problem of learning English straight away from LKG onward, not even entering into the so-called either mother tongue or market tongue or home tongue definition that you are Ananthasamy and many other so-called intellectuals were putting before the nation. That's all rubbish. Their children are put right from 3rd year, whether it is you are Ananthasamy or whether it is, when I asked Siddaramaiah, why don't you introduce straight away English medium in your government schools? He said, no, Kannada intellectuals will create problems to me. And that was the response everywhere, even including Pinarayi Vijayan, except Stalin and earlier Karunanidhi, and based on the fight that Periyar started, nobody was willing to do that, having afraid of the Brahmin intellectuals and Baniya intellectuals who completely educate their children in English medium right from age 3 and in the CBSE syllabus, in other syllabuses, and French, German as the 2nd language impose us, and Amit Shah or rest of the BJP leaders are also putting their children. What is this we are talking about? Mother tongue sentiment, regional languages. Where is the relationship between language and culture? I don't understand. What culture? Is there any relationship between the language that is there in Vedas, Ramayana, Mahabharata, or in the even Telugu text to the tilling of the land, making of the pot, which is the civilization symbol, or iron, making of the iron tools, or producing food? Where is the relationship between language and culture? Culture is a byproduct of agrarian, artisanal, productive process of labor. Culture is not a byproduct of language. This is a rubbish theory that Indian Brahmin scholars impose on all of us, and we believe this rubbish theory of culture. What happens to our culture? What is our culture? Our culture is how do we till the land, and what kind of relationship between the seed and land and water. What is the kind of forest we have around, and what kind of food we eat. Where is the relationship between Sanskrit language now as they are being taught to the food culture. But the whole Indian food culture is all meat culture. Harappan days में no. So therefore,
नहीं सोचना
my
पड़ेगा
simple
हल्का
conclusion,
चाहिए कुछ
this whole rubbish debate about mother tongue, language and culture, if all children learn English, what happens to the culture? This rubbish debate has to be set aside. I am entirely for that. It is both liberalism, left liberalism, and RSSism is intermixed in this bloody discourse. I am totally opposed to this. English is our now mother Indian language. English, we need only one language. We will certainly learn Telugu in the regional essence. 2 languages are enough. That is it.
Thank you very much, Professor Kancha Ilaiah. And you have put forward a very, very powerful argument for English as the only Indian language that we need. It is something that certainly will get a lot of people thinking and probably a lot of people upset also, but that's the whole point of this webinar, to stir up things, and just like K.P.Sasi would have wanted it to be, not be entirely, be gentle and polite, but be controversial, because there are too many things happening in this country which are being accepted without challenge. And the hegemony that we are talking about is something that is not only in the context of language, but also religion, food, dress, the whole area of what some people think are a moral worldview which should be imposed on everybody, ignoring the complete diversity of this country and the right of every Indian citizen to live as they want within the laws of the Constitution, of course, but without any interference from small lobbies that have always been there in this country, imposing their views on everybody else. And in this context, I would like to ask Professor Apoorvanand, Professor of Hindi at the Delhi University and a very well-known social commentator, political commentator, and particularly on the issue of, again, language and politics of language, to give us his insights in the context of the so-called Hindi belt or Hindi-speaking region. As Professor Devi mentioned earlier, a lot of languages of the northern parts of India and even the east and the west have been subsumed under Hindi, which is a relatively new language, around 150 years old. And much older languages have been actually hidden or ignored or suppressed even. Particularly I'm not just talking about the languages like Bhojpuri or Avdi or Maithili, but all the tribal languages, cross from all the way from the south to the north. There are many Adivasi languages just spoken by millions of people like Gondi or Santali, which are not being, not figuring anywhere in language debates at all, because they are among the most voiceless people in the country because of their social and economic condition. So, considering that, and also the issue of how Hindi has established its hegemony within the Hindi heartland, within the Hindi state, and what really is happening in those places, and how language has become a tool for politicians to increase the hegemony of small sections of Indian society and the rest of the country. Over to you, Professor.
Thank you very much, Satya, and thank you very much, Venu. I take this opportunity to pay my homage to K.P.Sasi. He left us too soon. This conversation is about politics of language. The second part was language of politics, but we can't do both together. So let's keep that apart. And I want to repeat what Professor G.N.Devy has said, and I agree with most of what he said in the beginning, and I also agree with part of what Professor Kancha Ilaiah said, because I also have slight discomfort with the whole idea of mother tongue, because and that is why we had proposed home language or street language or neighborhood language in place of mother tongue when we were designing national curriculum framework for school education in 2005 and 2006. Because again, mother tongue is not a fixed thing, and there are children who grow up without mothers, uh, and and yet they have language, and they get language from their surroundings, from the street they grow up on, etc. So we need to think about this whole notion of mother tongue and how it is politicized and weaponized. So that's one, but I am not going into that. Satya wants me to talk about Hindi, which is very natural, because I teach Hindi literature and I write primarily in Hindi, and I would like to speak about the politics of Hindi. Now, the Hindi that we use these days, which is a variant of Khadi Boli Hindi, and which now claims that it is spoken in the regions of Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, Himachal Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Uttarakhand, etc., and has Maithili, Magahi, Mewari, Bundeli, etc., as its dialects. That is the claim that Hindiwalas make when they want to tell you that the number of Hindi speakers is much, much larger than the number of those who speak other languages like Tamil or Telugu or other languages. So to show the supremacy of Hindi, what they do is they uh, inflate the number of people who speak in Hindi or who use Hindi. But in my classroom or in any average classroom in North India, if you ask students what is their first language, what is the language they use when they are at home or with their friends in their village or in the surroundings, they'll tell you that their first language is not the Hindi that they use in the classroom or in the shops or in the market, etc., or in the offices. The first language is Awadhi or Braj or Bhojpuri or Maithili or Mewari or Marwadi, other languages like these. But unfortunately, all these languages have now been relegated to the status of second-class citizens of the language family. And Hindi has taken over as the language of these areas. So this is one fact we need to keep in mind when we say that the number of Hindi speakers is much larger than the number of Tamil speakers or Malayalam speakers, or as Professor Devi was telling us that how this whole politics plays out, and the number of Telugu speakers has gone down. It's now on number 4, and how this number of Hindi speakers keeps increasing, because when partition took place and census after partition started, people in Delhi and surrounding areas put Hindi uh, as their mother tongue in the census forms and other forms. They didn't know Hindi. They, in fact, used Urdu in all their official work and all their public engagements. But they entered Hindi as their mother tongue as part of a political project which wanted to project Hindi as the largest language of India. The history of Hindi is divided in two parts. One is, and it's a simplification, but I am resorting to simplification for want of time. One is pre-independence, and the second is post-independence. In pre-independence India, you would find attraction for Hindi in southern part of India too. There were Hindi pracharani sabhas, people who were learning Hindi, and in fact, when I was interviewing the great theatre director B.V. Karant, who was Kannadiga, uh, he told me that uh, when he was a child, the Hindi pracharaks were treated as very glamorous people. And he left his theatre company and came to Banaras to learn Hindi. And he, in fact, learned Hindi uh, as a disciple of great Hindi literature, Hazari Prasad Dwivedi in Banaras. So Hindi was something people were attracted to. But why? Because it was part of a liberating project or a project of liberation, which was the independence struggle of India. That is why Hindi was loved. But in 30s, late 30s, when it started becoming clear that Hindi now wanted the place of the queen or the throne, then resentment started. The first expression of resentment came from Tamil Nadu. We all know that. For historical reasons, people ask why only Tamil Nadu? Why not from other states? There must be something wrong with Tamil Nadu not to accept Hindi as their language. It's similar to asking why some people revolt against injustice and others don't. Is there some problem with those who revolt against injustice and not with those who don't revolt against injustice? This is something we need to ask. But post-independence, it became very clear that Hindiwalas, on the basis of sheer strength of their number, wanted to impose their hegemony. And that is why opposition to Hindi uh, became very vociferous, especially in southern part of India. And, and that led to Nehru government and later Lal Bahadur Shastri government to assure the southern states, especially Tamil Nadu, that Hindi won't be imposed in any manner on them. That was the promise, that Hindi won't be imposed on them. But then Hindi, through indirect means, kept expanding itself or imposing itself. For example, this is again a very simplistic question which I ask in my classroom, that why is it that India celebrates only Hindi Divas? India, meaning the Union Government of India, why does it invest only in Hindi? Uh, why should other languages remain deprived? Why don't you have a national Tamil Day or national Malayalam Day or national Bangla Day? Why don't you have it? And why doesn't government celebrate it? That is one question which upsets Hindiwalas, because they think that Hindi is the Rashtra Bhasha. Professor G.N.Devy has explained that it is not Rashtra Bhasha and it is not even the only official language of India. But then, to cut a long story short, if we move and fast forward to the present times and to the BJP RSS regime, the original slogan has to be remembered and recalled. The slogan is Hindi, Hindu, Hindustan. So Hindi is the vehicle of Hindu nationalism, or the idea of Hindu nationalism. That is Hindi for RSS and BJP. And that is why they keep pushing Hindi. I would like to tell you about the visit of the Home Minister Amit Shah to Assam and other parts of Northeast 2-3 years back. And there he declared that Hindi would be the link language. Hindi would be the language which would link all parts of northeastern states with each other. Now, this was a very fantastic and ridiculous idea, because northeastern part, as linguists would tell you, is the richest in terms of presence of languages. And now what you are doing, you are proposing Hindi as the link language there. And he also announced that thousands of posts of Hindi teachers will be created for northeastern states. Now, what is this? You are investing so much in Hindi and not in other languages. Similarly, the government of India announced that it would create separate offices in the embassies, Indian embassies abroad, uh, and the offices which will have dedicated officers to work in Hindi. Now, one can ask, is Indian diaspora, or does Indian diaspora consist only of Hindi speakers and not Malayalam speakers or Telugu speakers, Tamil speaker or other speakers? So why do you have only office dedicated to Hindi? Why this? And why are you investing so much in your effort to make Hindi the language of United Nations? Why this partisan approach towards Hindi? What is so special about Hindi, apart from the fact that certain number of people call it as their mother tongue? What is so special, and why are other languages deprived? Now, 2 days before, and I'm concluding, 2 days before, because this government keeps clarifying that it is not trying to impose Hindi, and it was only telling Tamil Nadu to teach 3 languages to its children and not deprive them of the benefit of third language. Now, this was a very touching gesture on part of the government of India. But let us see how it does it. All of us who are familiar with All India Radio knew that there were broadcasts in all Indian languages, 22 languages, from the central office of Akashvani. But few years back, all of them were moved to regional offices. So symbolically and substantively, all these languages are regional language, and they have been sent to their own regions. They are not at the center. They are not national languages. This is what we need to understand, that this is how Hindi is being imposed. Second, 2 days back, I got a call from a correspondent from Telegraph, and he told me that now the textbooks, mathematics textbooks, and other textbooks are the titles of those textbooks are in Hindi or in Sanskrit. Why? Why are you naming all textbooks of all subjects in Hindi? Why should an English language textbook be called Purvi? Why Ganit Gyan? Why a mathematics book be called Ganit Gyan? Why not a Tamil name for an English book? Why only a Hindi name? This is how you push. And then yesterday, we saw that Government of India, Ministry of Home Affairs, has changed its URL into Devanagari Hindi URL. Now, this is how you force people to correspond with you in Hindi. I got a communication from my university written in Hindi. Now, how do you assume? You can say that Apoorvanand teaches Hindi. So, but I think that communication from Delhi University Registrar Office or Vice Chancellor Office goes to all faculty members in Devanagari script of Hindi. And that is wrong. Why should Delhi University expect a teacher who is teaching physics to understand its communication in Hindi? This is something we need to keep in mind when we talk about the politics of language and the cunning and insidious way in which this government is slowly uh, and, and gradually, uh, but with a very, I would say, with a sleight of hand, imposing Hindi on all aspects of our national life, which I think is unacceptable. Thank you. I stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Apoorvanand, for giving us your from your vast experience as a Hindi professor and also somebody who engages with the social dynamics of the Hindi-speaking areas and telling us about what exactly is the politics behind the imposition of Hindi. We've had a very rich diet of insights today from all the three speakers, different aspects of the issue of the position of Hindi and the politics of language have been talked about here. We will open up the floor for a brief discussion. We are already at 7:15. We are supposed to wind up by 7:30, but we can go up to 7:45. So I would request any of the other speakers want to say something right now, or shall we go ahead with the discussion? Those who want to ask any question can kindly raise their hands, and I would request them to keep questions, not a long statement on their own. We have other occasions for doing that. If anyone wants to ask a question, they can raise their hands.
I have a question.
Sorry?
I said I have a question. May I ask it?
Can I know who's speaking? Sorry.
My name is Ranjan Solomon.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
No, I mean, I'm fascinated by all that was said, and I agree with the stances that the speakers have taken. And I'm one of those who believe that we have no choice but to function with English as our linked language. You cannot suddenly bring Hindi as our linked language and shove it down our throats. But it was very interesting that as such, even Tamil Nadu, which might be the state that wants English, Tamil, and Finnish, also has a large number of students who study French and Spanish and so on and so forth. So I think there needs to be a different way of understanding what is needed in the context of a globalized world. You need the English. If you don't know it, you are nothing. You need your mother tongue because or the tongue or the language of the state, because I think that's important to relate to culturally. That's important. You can't say I'm in Tamil Nadu and I don't want to have anything to do with Tamil. I think it's important to have it. But then there are other languages. So why can't those choices be available rather than force Hindi? I studied Hindi compulsorily in school, and I went to Delhi University for my studies. And I went to the Hindi class and I had no clue what was happening. I knew I would never pass my BA with Hindi. So I somehow used all kinds of pretexts to tell the registrar that all that I studied was a second language. I've studied Hindi, I've finished it. So I want an exception, and I got philosophy. So I don't know what formulas we can use. It can't be forced. It really can't be forced, because most states, not only in the south, but also in the north and the northeast, don't speak Hindi fluently, not even in the north.
Are there any other questions? Anybody else has a question they can ask now? or while we're waiting for people to speak up, I just had a question to Professor Devi and also the other speakers, which is basically the issue of the languages of the indigenous or the Adivasi population is never really figure. I mean, even if we take Tamil or Telugu, as Professor Kancha Ilaiah mentioned, the issue of Telugu as a mother tongue is controversial because of many other languages subsumed within the Telugu-speaking regions. But you have very large populations of speakers of Gondi or Santhali or Munda or Ram. They're not recognized at all, and there are hundreds of such languages. Many of these languages have no support at all. They're not even recognized. There are no textbooks. There's no support for publication in these languages. Most of them. Some of them have made efforts. Like Santhali, I know, and Gondi, I know, have. These are among the most suppressed languages in the country in terms of allocation of resources, as Professor Apoorvanand said. All of it goes to him. Talk about the many languages of India. Where would the Adivasi languages figure?
No,
Professor Devi?
Satya, can I
yeah.
just say something?
Sorry?
Can I just say something?
Yeah, please go ahead.
No, one way that appears to be a solution to this is that even the remotest tribal areas, take for example, Telangana now has a track of tribals who speak Gond language in the Gondwana region. Koyas have their own Koya language. And the biggest number of scheduled caste today in Telangana is very large number is Lambadas. So it is for any state to provide tools and teachers within that small linguistic group to teach that as a complete medium appears to be impracticable. So the only way is, in a tribal region, a school can adopt, let us say, Lambadi language or Gond language as their home language within the school along with English. Now, the advantage of making English as the running stream of language from primary school to end 12th grade school is that they will enter into the regional market, the global market, and enter into all kinds of professions quite easily, while not leaving the local or family language. Now, that is now being proved in Telangana and Andhra Pradesh after making government schools English medium with one compulsory subject in Telugu. And they're also trying to adopt that compulsory in tribal languages, but it is still becoming a difficult issue. But I think Andhra Pradesh and Telangana seem to have already shown a way. We learn Hindi, but take it from me, nobody knows how to write in Hindi. I can speak Urdu and Hindi, even in Hindi channels I do speak in discussions, debates, so on, but that is not. So the only way is we have to define English, which is more than 250 years surviving language, which is a ruling class language, whether it cannot go away from their life. Even BJP RS. See, from the day one, when Nehru adopted this regional governments in the concurrent list will teach in regional languages, private schools in English. Their own ruling class ministers in that old generation also sent their children to English medium school. So I think that is the only way Now BJP had to give in to that argument. All this will not work. Putting Hindi titles, ultimately children will have to use mathematics as mathematics, science as science. You know, milk is milk and water is water all over now, even in BJP houses also. So I think that is the only way out.
Thank you.
Satya, I would like to say a few words about Shashi.
We can
Satya.
do that at the end.
Okay,
when
okay.
we-
Okay.
Yeah. Now, just to wrap up this discussion, Professor Devi, you probably have done more work on all the diverse languages of India, on the issue of Adivasi languages and where they are in terms of support or struggle to survive.
You want me to respond?
Yes, if you can, if you want.
Briefly, yes, I'll be brief. You know, when the 8th schedule was made, the demography was different. Migration has multiplied over the last several decades, and now more than 36% of Indians are migratory, working in areas which are different from the areas of their home language or language of the surrounding. Under such a situation, a policy instrument driven by the 8th schedule, and worse, the government has done, it has created a fourfold classification. There are 11 classical languages now. There are 22 scheduled languages. There are 100 languages, including scheduled languages, recognized by the census. And going by the last census, there are 1,369 total mother tongues, of which if you remove 120, that is about 1200, 1250, 1240 are non-scheduled, non-recognized languages. These are like four, Varna system: classical, scheduled, recognized, and completely unrecognized. This is a big mess because language is a asset, a capital, cultural capital. Is the smallest language, also adds to who we are, because every language has a unique worldview which no other language can replicate. But there is a solution here, because demography change, and large cities in particular, like Hyderabad, like Mumbai, like Chandigarh, like any large city, have now, or Delhi. Apoorvanand was speaking about Delhi. 200 to 300 languages are spoken in each of the large cities, and to have a state-specific, state language, Marathi for Mumbai, Punjabi for Chandigarh, it won't work. What we need to do is, just as we created union territories for administrative purposes, we need to create specially linguistic union of whatever multilingual territories we have to recognize without detaching them from the state to which they belong. So that the policy for those particular large cities, education policy, can be specific to those cities, allowing, and that was Ranjan Solomon's question. If they want to do French or Dutch or Portuguese or whatever other language, let those kids have the opportunity. Otherwise, we will keep them backward. What Kancha Ilaiah is speaking about English also applies to world languages that people want to learn in large cities. So to recognize spatial multilingual territories, I will not call them union territories, but where language policy for those territories can be specific to those individual territories. That is one way. The second is, allow the district education officer, allow the district administration to decide for that particular district what should be the language or languages to be taught in the schools there. Because from district to district, when I did the People's Linguistic Survey, I found identified about 780 languages. There are about 800 districts. So, off the cup, I can say practically every district has a different language situation. Allow the district, just as Panchayat Raj Kanun, PASA, let there be a language related law which allows district authorities to decide what should be the language of education in that district. I think it will be most realistic, it will be just, it will save languages, and it will take unnecessary burden that the central government and the state governments are taking upon themselves without being able to meet the responsibilities involved. They're making a mess of languages of people, and therefore they're making a mess of people's lives. So these two legislative shifts are overdue, and we neglected them because of our strange skewed sense of identity as states, and also political ideologies. But one day, if language politics really hots up in this country, its logical end will be, and it should be, that every district in India has a language autonomy, not a territorial autonomy, a language autonomy. I think that is easy to do. It was done in the past in various places at various phases in our history. It can be done again. It will be most enlightened, and it will save India's dying languages, including tribal languages, languages of nomads, and the worst hit languages in India are coastal languages, because the entire coast of India has been handed over to corporate. All the fishing communities have been forced into an undesired, unwanted migration, losing their culture and language altogether. So this is what I want to say about tribal languages and about foreign languages. This kind of policy shift is overdue, and we should press for it, and someday actually manage to get it. Ultimately, India, if there is anything that binds us together, it is our multilingualism. India is at heart and in its soul, if soul exists at all, a linguistic civilization. Nothing more, nothing less. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thanks for remembering the fishing community among whom Shashi did a lot of work. He fought for their rights, and he also made a lot of films on the coastal issues, the very neglected area. Just to wind up this discussion now, I would like to ask Professor Apoorvanand if he has anything more to say, and then hand it over to Binu to say something about Shashi and say the closing remarks.
I don't have really anything to add to what I said. Only thing I want to say is that even in Tamil Nadu, people are learning Hindi when they want, and Tamil Nadu government has not stopped them from learning Hindi. That should be very clear to Hindiwalas who are misled into believing that Tamil Nadu government is stopping people in Tamil Nadu from learning Hindi. Second, it is for the people living in the so-called Hindi areas to understand the politics of Hindi that is being played by the BJP to give them a false sense of superiority, and to create in them a resentment against people living in Tamil Nadu or Kerala or other parts of India. So that is what BJP is doing, a false sense of superiority or supremacy. And second, resentment. It is creating resentment in the Hindi-speaking people against people living in so-called non-Hindi states. But I'm not sure if there are efforts, sufficient or adequate efforts, to enlighten the people of Hindi areas about what is being done to them. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Pradhanji. I now hand it over to Binu Matthew, editor of Countercurrents, to talk some more details about K.P.Sasi, remembering Shashi. and also to
Yeah, we were talking about language and language. Shashi was a multilingual person. He spoke Malayalam well, English well, Hindi well, and he even studied German in JNU. He made one feature film in Hindi, one feature film in Malayalam, and one silent film. And most of his documentaries were multilingual. His last film, Kandamal, was where the Adivasis of Kandamal were speaking their, their original language that was that translated into English. And while we were talking about Adivasi language, I thought I would add this. Shashi's most popular video is Gavan Choda Nahi, which he did with Meghanath. I think it was in Adivasi language. It had millions of views on YouTube, and it had dozens of recreations, versions. Even I saw a video where a Bangladeshi student in the campus doing a version of Gawa Choda Nahi Bangla from Bangladesh. So he was a multilingual, and he respected all languages, and he had respect for all language, all his life. And I would like, and this panel discussion was wonderful. This was, I initially said, what we really missed was Shashi. If he was present, he would really have loved this session. This session was so insightful, multiple perspectives on language. It's a current issue which is very dear to him. And I would like to thank all the panelists for their wonderful presentation. And also I would like to thank all the guests who participated in this meeting. And with this note, I think we can conclude the program. Thank you all.